In 6 weeks, the unthinkable happened. A nation that had spent 20 years preparing for war. A nation with more tanks than its enemy. A nation whose army was called the finest in Europe. Collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. This is the story of how Hitler destroyed France. Not with overwhelming force, but with a plan so daring that his own generals thought it was suicide. And how the French had every advantage, including the very weapons that won the battle, and still found a way to lose. Welcome to the Battle of France. 44 days that changed the world forever. To understand why France fell so fast, you must first understand what happened in 1918. After 4 years of trench warfare. After 9 million military dead. After Verdun, where 300,000 men vanished into the mud. France emerged from the First World War victorious and broken. The northern third of the country was devastated. Whole villages had ceased to exist. The generation that would have rebuilt the nation lay in mass graves from the Somme to Champagne. And France looked east, toward a Germany that was humiliated but unbroken, and felt a terror that would shape every decision for the next 22 years. They would never again fight on French soil. That was the vow. That was the obsession. That was the trap. In the 1920s, French military planners studied the last war and prepared to fight it again. They saw the solution in concrete and steel. The Maginot Line, named for the Minister of War who championed it, was not merely a defensive line. It was a state of mind. 400 miles of underground fortresses, connected by rail lines and telephone cables, with living quarters, hospitals, kitchens, and guns that could fire 20 miles. The French poured 3 billion francs into this wall, convinced that technology and engineering could replace the blood of their sons. And they were almost right. Almost. The Maginot Line worked exactly as designed. When the Germans finally attacked it directly in 1944, they bounced off. But the line had a fatal flaw. One that the French acknowledged but never fixed. It stopped at the Belgian border. The logic seemed sound. Belgium was an ally. To fortify the border with Belgium would signal distrust, and perhaps drive the Belgians into German arms. Besides, if the Germans attacked through Belgium again, as they had in 1914, the French army would advance north to meet them, fighting on Belgian soil, protecting French factories and farms, repeating the miracle of the Marne. This strategy had a name, Plan D, and it was Sioux. Across the Rhine, Germany faced a strategic nightmare. The French and British empires together had more men, more industry, more ships, more everything. A long war meant defeat. Hitler knew this. His generals knew this. The only hope was a short, decisive campaign that knocked France out before the resources of the British Empire could be mobilized. But how? The original German plan looked depressingly familiar. A repeat of 1914. A sweep through Belgium. A turn south toward Paris. A hope that the French would make mistakes. General Erich von Manstein looked at this plan and saw failure. The French had studied 1914 too. They would be ready. The British Expeditionary Force would join the line. The war would bog down into another trench slaughter. And Germany would lose. Manstein proposed something different. Something terrifying. Something that violated every rule of conventional warfare. The main German force, 7 panzer divisions, would attack through the Ardennes. The Ardennes was a forest. 80 miles of trees and ravines and narrow roads. Deemed impassable for tanks by French and British planners. Manstein proposed the impossible. Send the armor through the forest. Cross the Meuse River before the French could react. Then turn not toward Paris, but toward the English Channel. Cut the Allied armies in half. Trap the British. Destroy the French. End the war in 6 weeks. The German High Command thought Manstein was mad. Hitler overruled them. He loved the audacity. He loved the risk. He loved that no one expected it. On February 24, 1940, Fall Gelb, Case Yellow, became official German strategy. Here is where the story becomes almost unbearably ironic. The French did not lose because they lacked tanks. They had more tanks than the Germans. 3,400 to Germany's 2,400. The French did not lose because their tanks were inferior. The Char B-1 bis was arguably the best tank in the world in 1940. 60 tons of steel. A 75mm gun in the hull. A 47mm gun in the turret. Armor that German guns could not penetrate. One Char B-1, named Ur, single-handedly destroyed 13 German tanks in a single engagement, and drove away. The French did not lose because they lacked courage. They would suffer 360,000 casualties in 6 weeks, fighting with desperate bravery against odds that seemed overwhelming. They lost because they misunderstood their own weapons. The French saw tanks as mobile artillery, supporting the infantry, spreading their armor across the front in penny packets, attached to infantry divisions that moved at walking pace. The Germans saw tanks differently. They saw them as the weapon of decision, concentrated in mass, moving fast, bypassing strong points, creating panic behind the lines, disrupting command and control, making the enemy react rather than act. This was Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Though the Germans never officially used that term. It was not a new technology. It was a new way of thinking. And the French, for all their tanks, could not think that way. May 10, 1940. Dawn. Germany invaded the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. The Dutch and Belgians screamed for help. The French and British responded exactly as the Germans hoped. General Gaston Bellot, commanding the 1st Army Group, ordered his armies forward into Belgium. The British Expeditionary Force, 300,000 strong, marched north. The French 7th Army raced toward the Dutch border. The cream of the Allied forces moved away from the real danger, into a trap that was closing behind them. Meanwhile, in the Ardennes, the real German thrust began. 7 panzer divisions, under General Heinz Guderian and General Erwin Rommel, pushed through the forest. French reconnaissance aircraft spotted the columns and reported them. French commanders dismissed the reports. The Ardennes was impossible for tanks. The reports must be wrong. By May 12, German tanks reached the Meuse River at Sedan, the same Sedan where Napoleon III had surrendered in 1870. The French defenders were second-rate divisions, reservists, poorly trained, demoralized by bombing that they had been told could not happen. On May 13, Guderian's tanks crossed the Meuse. French counterattacks failed. By nightfall, German bridgeheads were secure, and the French High Command finally understood what was happening. Too late. Far too late. On May 15, German tanks broke into open country. Guderian turned west, toward the Channel, not toward Paris. The French expected him to turn south. He ignored Paris. He ignored French reserves. He drove for the sea. General Charles de Gaulle, commanding a hastily formed armored division, attacked the German flank at Mount Cornet. His tanks were better than the Germans. His men fought bravely. He gained no support from headquarters. No coordination. No plan. The French had tanks. They had courage. They had no idea how to use them together. By May 20th, Guderian reached the Channel at Abbeville. The Allied armies in Belgium were cut off. The British expected. The French High Command fell apart. General Maurice Gamelin, the commander-in-chief, sat in his headquarters issuing orders to armies that no longer existed. He was replaced by General Maxime Weygand, 73 years old, who took 3 days to visit the front and concluded that all was lost. The British saw the disaster clearly. On May 26, Operation Dynamo began. The evacuation from Dunkirk. Over 9 days, 338,000 Allied soldiers were rescued by a fleet of destroyers, ferries, fishing boats, yachts, anything that could float. The British called it a miracle. It was actually a catastrophic defeat dressed in heroic language. They left behind all their equipment. 40,000 French soldiers became prisoners. And the British army that returned to England was a beaten force that would need years to rebuild. Meanwhile, the Germans turned south. Against a French army that had lost its best units, its confidence, and its will to fight. The French government fled Paris on June 10th. The city was declared open. German troops marched down the Champs-Élysées on June 14th. The same route Napoleon had taken returning from his victories. Now the conquerors were German, and the silence of defeat hung over the City of Light. On June 16th, Prime Minister Paul Reynaud resigned. He recommended continuing the war from North Africa. He was ignored. Marshal Philippe Pétain, the hero of Verdun, the 84-year-old symbol of French resistance in 1916, became Prime Minister and immediately asked for an armistice. On June 22, 1940, in the same railway car at Compiegne where Germany had surrendered in 1918, France signed the instrument of defeat. Hitler sat in the chair where Marshal Foch had presided over German humiliation. He smiled for the cameras. Then he ordered the railway car destroyed, and the site demolished. The symbolism mattered to him. The revenge mattered. The victory mattered more. Why did France fall so fast? The question has haunted historians for 80 years. And the answers are both simple and complex. The simple answer is that the Germans fought a new war, and the French fought the old one. Blitzkrieg was not just tanks and planes. It was speed, surprise, decentralized command that let junior officers exploit opportunities. The German army of 1940 was the most flexible military force in history. The French army was rigid, centralized, paralyzed by a command structure that required permission from headquarters to move a battalion. The complex answer involves politics, society, psychology. France in 1940 was a nation divided. The left and right hated each other more than they hated Hitler. The trauma of 1914 to 1918 had created a culture of defeat disguised as caution. The Maginot Line was concrete proof of a national desire to avoid battle at any cost. And when battle came anyway, the will to resist collapsed with shocking speed. But there is another factor. One that is uncomfortable but true. The French were not wrong that they could not afford another Verdun. They were wrong about how to avoid it. They thought defense would save them. They discovered that defense without maneuver, without counterattack, without the will to take casualties in order to inflict them, was merely slow-motion defeat. The Germans took 150,000 casualties in 6 weeks. Heavy losses for a short campaign. But they paid the price for victory. The French were unwilling to pay the price for anything less than guaranteed success. And in war, there are no guarantees. France fell. But France did not disappear. The government in Vichy collaborated, but the French people resisted. Slowly at first, then with growing courage. By 1944, the French resistance was tying down German troops that Hitler desperately needed elsewhere. Charles de Gaulle in London refused to accept defeat. He was a junior general, unknown to the public, ridiculed by the British, ignored by the Americans. But he spoke for something that had not died. The idea of France. Not the army that surrendered. Not the politicians who gave up. But the nation that would return. And return it did. In 1944, French troops landed in Normandy and Provence. They liberated Paris. They fought into Germany. The army that collapsed in 6 weeks in 1940 took 6 months to help win back in 1944 and 1945. Same men. Different leaders. Different spirit. Different outcome. The fall of France changed everything. It brought Britain to the brink of defeat. It allowed Hitler to turn east against the Soviet Union. It brought Italy into the war. It convinced Japan that the European empires were hollow and ready to fall. The 6 weeks of May and June 1940 set the stage for everything that followed. The Battle of Britain, Barbarossa, Pearl Harbor, the Holocaust, the Cold War. All of it traces back to the French defeat. And the tanks? Those French tanks that were better than Germany's. They sat in depots. Or advanced in ones and twos to be picked off. Or were captured and used against their makers. The weapons did not matter because the mind using them was wrong. Technology is neutral. Doctrine is destiny. Walk the fields of Sedan today. The Meuse River still flows. The forests of the Ardennes still stand. The villages have been rebuilt. The graves are tended. But if you know where to look, you can see the tank tracks, the foxholes, the scars of a defeat that should not have happened. And did. The Battle of France was not inevitable. It was not the result of German supermen against French cowards. It was the result of one side that dared to think differently, against another side that dared not think at all. The French had the tanks. They had the men. They had the territory to defend. They lacked only the understanding that defense without courage becomes merely delay. And delay is not victory. Hitler destroyed France in 6 weeks. But he created something else. A myth of invincibility that led him to believe he could do anything. Invade Russia. Declare war on America. Fight the world. That myth died in the snow of Stalingrad and the beaches of Normandy. But it began in the sunshine of May 1940, when the impossible became real, and the world learned to fear the lightning war. The French recovered. The nation returned. The shame of 1940 became the pride of 1944. But the 44 days of defeat remain a warning. To every army that believes equipment can replace imagination. To every nation that thinks the last war taught all the lessons. To every leader who forgets that war is not chess. It is chaos. And chaos favors the bold. This was the Battle of France. 6 weeks that proved that history turns on moments. That courage without wisdom is waste. That wisdom without courage is surrender. And that even the finest army in Europe can forget what it means to fight.